famed civil rights leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson, has died at the age of 84. Jackson's family released a statement today announcing the Reverend died peacefully this morning, surrounded by loved ones. They said all public observances commemorating the Reverend's life will be held in Chicago, where he lived for more than 6 decades. Reverend Jackson was with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the day that Dr. King was shot, and for some, he took the mantle of the civil rights movement forward. CBS News correspondent Michael George has more on Jackson's lasting legacy.
We are against racism.
Jesse Jackson said he dedicated both heart and soul to the fight for justice.
We must put a diploma in one hand, symbolizing knowledge and wisdom, and put a voter registration card in that other hand, symbolizing power and responsibility.
Born in 1941 in South Carolina, Jackson grew up under Jim Crow laws. By the time he'd graduated from college, he was involved in the civil rights movement. In 1965, he joined Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s inner circle, taking on a leadership role. He was with Dr. King in Memphis when he was assassinated a few years later.
High school graduation.
Ordained as a minister, Jackson began Operation Push in Chicago in 1971 and created his political pulpit, pressuring companies to hire more black workers and extend business ties with the African American community. In 1984, he founded the National Rainbow Coalition and launched his first presidential run. The campaign raised his profile, but anti-Jewish comments sparked a scandal that damaged his reputation. After losing a second presidential run in 1988, he kept his spot on the political stage.
We are a humane people. We fight for justice and fairness.
Jackson delivered rousing speeches at Democratic conventions.
Keep hope alive.
And he supported candidates, including his son, Jesse Jackson Jr., who was elected to the U.S. House. In the 1980s and 90s, he helped negotiate the release of American hostages held abroad. And in later years, he protested for victims of police violence, from Ferguson to Chicago to Baton Rouge.
Stop the violence. Save the nation.
In 2017, Jackson revealed he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And while the disease may have slowed him down, he said it wouldn't stop him from his mission, instilling hope in the hopeless. Michael George, CBS News.
Let us bring in Antjuan Seawright. He's a Democratic strategist and the founder and the CEO of Blueprint Strategy, LLC. Antjuan, it's good to see you, my friend. I just want to note that just a few minutes ago, President Trump commented on the Reverend Jesse Jackson's death. He called him a, quote, good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. As we sit here this morning pondering a world without Jesse Jackson, what are your thoughts on this imperfect but monumental and towering figure in the civil rights movement?
Well, I feel like there's been a thread pulled out of the fabric of the civil rights movement, certainly out of this country, and quite frankly, out of our community. Jesse Jackson will go down as one of the most consequential voices and leaders of his day and of our day. The fact of the matter is his fight continues to be our fight. His fight for justice, his fight for racial equality, his fight for social economic justice, his fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion continues to spill over today. And so it's a friendly reminder, while we made progress in some areas, progress has to be protected. Otherwise, it will never be permanent. I appreciate Reverend Jackson's journey as a son of the South, born in the segregated South. Separate, never equal has always been the order of the day. And myself, as a 40-year-old black man from the South, are facing some of the same challenges in my generation as he did in his generation.
And when you think about progress, Antjuan, I'm just wondering who you think might be at the helm of the next generation here, especially when you consider where we're at here in America. You know, a lot of folks will say we need movements like this now more than ever before.
Well, just like the civil rights movement of their day and like the current movement of our day, there's a firm belief that leaders do not create movements, movements create leaders. And so I don't one person per se that will carry the mantle. I think it's a collection of individuals who bring diverse experiences to the table that will carry the torch. You know, as ironic as it may be, Vlad, God has such a sense of humor, the same God that Jesse Jackson believed in, the same God that I believed in, that he would allow Reverend Jackson to transition at the age of 84. His first presidential race was in 1984. He would allow him to transition in the month of February, where we uplift and amplify the contributions of Black America in this country at the same period of time, while there's some in this country who want to whitewash and sanitize history. And then finally, the fact that one of his central fights has been voting rights and access to the ballot box. It's funny how in this day and age, we're still having some of those same conversations, how voting rights continues to be the most consequential issue of our day. So it's going to take a coalition that Reverend Jackson tried to put together throughout his life in order to carry out the work going forward.
So, you know, speaking of voting and voter inclusion, that was something that Reverend Jackson talked about a lot, particularly when he was running for president in 1984 and 1988. He emphasized voter inclusion, and he warned that democracy could not survive if millions of what he eventually termed the Rainbow Coalition were not included in this American democracy of ours, the Black and brown, the working poor, middle-class people, people who had been marginalized in American society. He set about building this coalition because he honestly believed that that was the way forward. And it wasn't one built, as you know, Antjuan, on racial resentment. That was not something that he trafficked in. What he wanted to do was to say that there is a dream. Dr. King had a dream. My dream, the dream that I have, includes everybody.
Well, I can tell you this, and I said this actually on this network around the same time when Joe Biden became the president-elect. The same hands that once picked cotton now pick presidents. And that was a phrase coined from the late Jesse Jackson. And he said that because for Black Americans, our right to actively participate, while the Civil Rights Act passed, while the Voting Rights Act passed, we still had to fight and push in order to have our voices heard. That's why his effort to being inclusive for all voices and elevating the fact while Black Americans may be the most consequential voting bloc, it's going to take a coalition of others in order to move our country forward on the issues that matter to all of us. There was not a constituency in this country or an issue that Reverend Jackson could not speak to or speak to anyone about. That is what made him a charismatic, dynamic leader. And while we uplift and celebrate Barack Obama's candidacy and his presidency, hope and change was first coined and lived by Reverend Jesse Jackson. He made everyone believe that you can be somebody, particularly little Black boys and little Black girls who had dreams and transitioned eventually to be men and women with vision because of his leadership and because of his tenacious approach to pushing our community forward.
Yeah, and Antjuan, that reminds me of that poem that he very famously, would say over and over again, I am somebody. And that really, really speaks to, I think, this idea of not just unifying people of the same race, but across culture and across generations, right? And I just wondered today, Antjuan, when you reflect on his legacy and the pillars of that movement that he helped to create, what do we need to now take from that moment, from that story, to apply to how we can sort of find some unity in this very divisive country we happen to live in now?
Well, we have to learn how to yell in the places we agree and whisper in the places we disagree. The reality is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent issues. And for us, particularly those of us who subscribe to the Democratic Party, he is proof that we must go everywhere and talk to anyone if we want to be successful, because that's what building is all about.
All right, Antjuan Seawright, always good to talk to you, my friend. And I know that it is a sad day when we look back on the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson, but in a way, I referenced that photo that Bernice King, the daughter of Dr. King herself, posted on social media, which shows Dr. King and Jesse Jackson together, and paraphrasing here, that they're now with the ancestors. Antjuan, my friend, thank you very much, as always. Appreciate it. And we will continue the coverage of the passing of Jesse Jackson all throughout the morning right here on CBS News 24/7.